All righty. Welcome to Seedtag's She Speaks AdTech panel focused on the power of representation. My name is Jocelyn Lowe, and I'm going to be your host today. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a proud second-generation Taiwanese American, and I'm the Global Director of Brand and Communications at Seedtag, the leading global contextual advertising company leveraging proprietary AI technology to create meaningful connections between brands, advertisers, and publishers and their audience in a privacy-first world. It is my absolute pleasure to host today's conversation on embracing diversity and gender responsiveness in the advertising technology space to drive innovation. And you'll hear from a fantastic panel of female leaders that will be addressing the challenges women face within our industry and how we can make our space more inclusive for all. But before we jump in, let's get to know our panelists. I'm going to pass it off to Kirsten first.
Awesome. Thank you, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Atkinson. Happy Women's History Month to everyone. Also wanted to say thank you to Seedtag for inviting me to this conversation, and I look forward to having this discussion with a fellow panelist. I am a 25-year veteran here in the advertising industry. I work at Complex, which was just acquired by Network, where I lead the brand partnerships team as head of sales. So excited to have this conversation, talk about my experiences as a diverse woman in leadership, and also, kick it off to the next panelist here. Diane, I'll kick it to you.
So yes, thanks to Jocelyn and Seedtag for today's panel. It seems very exciting and looking forward to chatting with all of you. My name is Diane deCordova. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an American. I'm the co-founder and COO, effectively also the CFO and head of legal operations at Adelaide, an attention metrics company. Our current team's been operating in the ad tech space for about 10 years. But I started about 30 years ago in the web media industry with a number of startups and some of the bigger leaders like Yahoo and Google. Prior to that, I had a number of years in global investment banking and M&A with Morgan Stanley, and that helped me develop a lot of financial and negotiating skills early on that have been fairly important. And it's probably worth mentioning that I'm a member of firstboard.io, which is an organization promoting talented tech women for board positions that might be of interest to some of you. I'm also an investor in the 98, which is an investment fund that supports women-led startups so women leaders can benefit from receiving more than the 2% of equity capital that's out there today. So looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, I can go next. My name is Heather Carver. Again, thank you to Seedtag for having me be part of this very great and diverse panel. So kudos to you on that as well. I go by the pronoun she, her, and I'm American. I am a 15+ year veteran of ad tech. Really started the beginning of my career on the publisher side. Definitely in the early days, not as many women in the ad tech space, especially as I joined Rubicon, now named Magnite, for 10 years. So it was really great to grow my career as a woman. I had a lot of great allies along the way to help grow my career there. And I am now currently the Chief Revenue Officer at FreeStar. Had a lot of support from other women, from men and others to get to where I am today. Really excited to be part of the FreeStar team, be kind of the first female Chief Revenue Officer and one of the only a couple of women at this point on the leadership team. And at FreeStar, we are a programmatic partner for publishers where we offer full stack monetization to help publishers meet their monetization needs and their other revenue and programmatic needs for their business. Excited to be here. I will kick it over to Lily.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Lily Panchasarp. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm, again, reiterating, very honored and excited to be here and have this conversation. I am the daughter of Thai immigrants. I grew up in Texas, but I have lived in New York City and now currently in Los Angeles for over 16 years. I have the pleasure of working at Disney Advertising, I lead an amazing team of what I call sales consultants in the programmatic space. So women and men in ad tech, and we're talking about how can we utilize data and technology to marry it together for the best use of our clients and their main KPIs. So a little background of me, as Diane also said, my background's in finance. I started there and I wanted to kind of pivot and lean in more into my passions, which is sports. And what better is the worldwide leader of sports. So I took a hard pivot to media advertising, and I started at ESPN, and I've grown within the Disney family for over 12 years now. So I'm very excited to have this conversation going forward.
I will go next. I'll wrap it up. Hi, everyone. I'm Jiji Ugboma, and I'm very excited to be here. I am Nigerian living in the US. I've lived here about 7 years and lived in Europe for a few more years, for about 3 years. And yes, I'm the head of engagement at She Media. My background is in communications, marketing, and engagement strategy. I started out in higher institution. I was did communications and marketing for the Parsons School of Design, and then I did the same thing on the brand side in the cosmetics industry, and now I am in the publishing industry and in ad tech, and I handle engagement for a collective of publishers at the She Media Collective, and I'm excited to be here today.
Right. Now that you've gotten to know more about our all-star panelists, as you can tell from their introductions, I think let's kickstart our discussion today by shining a spotlight on the profound importance of inclusion and its transformative power in the workplace. While we've seen progress in the recent years, I think it's still very crucial to acknowledge the individuals from diverse backgrounds still encounter challenges in their professional environments. And even as many companies ramp up efforts to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's vital to understand that creating a genuinely inclusive culture is an ongoing journey and not simply a task to be ticked off. And so I think a great way to set the stage for our first question is really sharing an interesting stat that was from Deloitte and Cloverplot, where they highlighted the undeniable benefits of inclusion. So revealing that inclusive teams actually make better decisions 87% of the time and deliver 60% better results, showcasing the significant impact of diversity on business performance. And to add to that, 47% of employees actively seek out diversity and inclusion efforts from their employers. So what this showcases is there's a huge shift in mindset that underscores a growing recognition of importance of working in environments where individuals can truly bring their authentic selves to the table. So our first question is focused around that. How can we ensure that all ingredients, diverse perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds are valued and appreciated in our workplace? I'm going to kick it over to our panelists.
I'm happy to jump in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kristen.
No, I was going to say it's important to acknowledge the fact that bringing inclusivity to table requires you to recruit, right? Diverse individuals. And from my perspective, the only reason I'm in advertising is because Renetta McCann, who a lot of people know in this industry from Publicis and Starcom, made a decision to recruit from historically Black colleges. I went to Clark Atlanta University, and she charged a team of women and men to recruit from these HBCUs and bring people into advertising that don't look like those that that we're used to, right? Diverse individuals. This was 24 years ago. So first and foremost, it's important for us to seek diversity, go out and find it, because I think growing up in this industry, I heard a lot of people say, I just can't find talent. I just can't find people. They're out there. And so I really give a lot of credit to folks. And Renetta was not in HR. She was a leader, a female leader. who knew the importance of bringing diverse people to the industry. And then, secondarily, appreciate the diversity that's at the table is super important. I had a manager, I was in the agency business for 18 years, jumped over to ad sales at NBC, and then now with Complex. But I'll tell you, along the journey, the most insulting thing that was ever told to me is that I needed to sandpaper my style. And that was by an executive vice president female. And I felt that, first and foremost, as women, as diverse individuals, our style is sometimes all you have, in addition to the incredible knowledge that you bring to the table. Those two together is your superpower. And so once you find diverse talent and once you have people in the room, whether you're a manager or a peer, appreciate it, and really value and listen to those that are there because they're there for a reason. And it might be uncomfortable to be around those who aren't like you, but it's the most important thing that our business has to offer. So I'll toss it to Heather. It seems like you wanted to chime in there.
I love that, though, the not having to sandpaper your style. I think there has been, a feeling sometimes where women over the years, in order to get in leadership positions, feel like they have to act a certain way or, not soften their edges as much and be their true authentic self to get ahead. And kind of fit in with kind of what the culture has been in the past in this industry. So I love that. And I think there's more celebration of that happening now. So appreciate you saying that. But, I was going to say, Jocelyn, you made a really great point in your intro about not just ticking a box. These need to be really concerted efforts of companies. Because there is a lot of people who, if you're trying to hire someone, you might know someone who you've known for years and they have the same ideas and thoughts as you. And you have to really be open to, okay, as much as I want to hire that person, let's also try to find a diverse other panel of people in terms of recruiting and bringing new people in, but also having a diverse group of people who are doing the interviewing, right? So you've got a diverse set of people who are interviewing people, and you're not just kind of bringing in the friends and people that who might be extremely, extremely talented, but it is a concerted, you have to think about the people you're putting on a panel. I mean, I can tell today, obviously, across the different, nationalities and other things you have on this particular call, you were probably very thoughtful about that, right? Which I can definitely appreciate. Then I think within organizations, it does kind of come from leaders. It doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, but people who take leadership positions and really want to encourage diversity, encourage the celebration of other cultures. And I think there is that element of, I think we all do a lot of tactical trainings at work every day. This is how, you do this project and how we're going to tackle this goal. But there's also an element of soft skills training and teaching managers, bringing in outside facilitators, and not just ticking the box, but really trying to do that, making a concerted effort to think about these things and think about what diversity is and how you can actually action on that and have company goals around that. Not just, okay, my goal is to hit this revenue target and to do this. Well, as you said, you can probably hit those goals better if you also do spend the time on those soft skills and thinking about other things. So instead of really being so focused on numbers and metrics, I think, really thinking about how to make this part of the overall culture is important.
I'm gonna jump in here and definitely echoing what both of you have said. I think also having diversity in leadership, when you do that, eventually there's always a trickle-down effect, right? If the people making these decisions are not reflective of these decisions, right? They're not reflective of what you're trying to do, and you keep it, say, oh, we want to encourage diverse perspectives and, have a more diverse team, but leadership is untouchable in that respect. It becomes a caricature of what you're trying to do, and it becomes like, the emperor's new clothes, like, oh yeah, we're doing this great thing and promoting diversity, but it does not really look like that in the places that count, in the rooms where the decisions are being made. So I think starting from the top is one way to really ensure that, you know, those goals of promoting diversity and inclusivity and diversity of thought and perspectives becomes a systemic part of the organization.
Great information. And Kirsten, I think I need a shirt that says "Never sandpaper your style." Now that is fine. I'm gonna vote that Seedtag makes those t-shirts and shares it with all of us, because I think I'm definitely gonna rock it. Honestly, I love that we're not just talking about celebrating diversity. It's easy to celebrate. I think that's the one thing that I'm hearing from all of you guys. But what it is that we're really recognizing the power behind each person's unique perspective and the difference it can really make from a work environment to innovation and so much more beyond what we see in the workplace as well. And I think that something that's really important is the topic around allies, right? You need the allies in order for this to happen. We talked about, Jiji brought up a really great point about, the trickle down effect, but also what about the other allies outside of that, right? So, the next question is focused on, how do supportive allies in the workplace promote inclusivity and diversity? And could you share a specific instance where allyship has significantly influenced your career trajectory?
Jocelyn, I'll take this one if I can. This one's great. And supportive allies to me is creating space and being respectful of others by listening with intention, right? It's being a voice for progress. And I think we're all talking about this as a collective, allowing others, what I always say, to stay curious, because that signals that, especially at Disney, we're promoting their growth. We care about what they are. Our president likes to say, rising tide lifts all boats. And that's true. At Disney, and me being an executive there, I want to be able, I'm championing those people and their uniqueness of, hey, it might be external. I could see their diversity like with my eyes, but it's internally facing too. And we want to make sure we're creating that safe space to learn more and for them to be truly unique and authentic. So I think inclusivity overall and the allyship is just having the intention behind it. I do, when you're talking about how has that really helped me in my growth trajectory, I think overall, the allyship of, having a diverse female at the forefront as a manager, I think Disney has seen that in me because I work hard, right? I feel like I've earned it. I know that they trust me in doing the work, but also thinking of, hey, I think Heather made a good point before, as yes, you could kind of have your friends or like people that you might work well with and it's just easier. So was that another male with another male, but taking a little risk, or hey, they might be able to lead and cultivate that comfortability for their team to really speak and feel safe and overall. So I think Disney's done a great job to cultivate that. We talked about, I think Kirsten, you were saying, how to make it measurable. How do you push it on your own company to say it's not just sales goals, but how do we motivate and also promote that thought? And Disney does do that, and it's amazing. And I lead a sales team, but also part of my compensation is how is D&I in it? How are we pushing others and being a true ally in this space? And I love that we're being more intentional overall about it. So I love this question, but Kirsten, I know you were about to jump in.
No, thank you for kicking that question off. I think it's a very important one. I think allyship, we should not think of it as just mentorship. We should think of it as how can we give people access? And I think that's the difference. You can mentor someone, you can talk to them to death, but if you're not extending your network and allowing people to gain the kind of experiences and opportunities that you as a leader and influencer have, then really what are we doing to push the conversation forward? And I think I've been blessed to be in a role with Think LA, where I'm the co-president, and we've made diversity as a core pillar of the organization. That's important to come in and say, as the leading ad advertising, advertising agency or, organization in the market, how do we enforce inclusion in a way that it's a part of our DNA and not just a separate initiative? And that's, I think, one core thing that we need to do is bring it in as a main objective, as opposed to here's a support group over here that's helping people cope, with the realities. The other, thing that I'm blessed to be able to do is in my day job, with Complex and Network, it's giving opportunities to young creators, young influencers, young people who are hustling and trying to get into our space. And we have the ability to bring them in as partners or vendors or talent, being those privileges that we have to bring people, young people, diverse people, women, into spaces and places that we have influence, and the access that we're able to give is super important. Oh, Diane, I think you're on mute.
So I got construction behind me, so apologies for that. So Kirsten, thank you for that. I think supportive allies just really need to make an effort to seek out diverse candidates or opinions. It really is just acknowledging their own biases and limitations, and really working to promote the younger folks, as you were saying, or folks that are bringing something different to the table. For the most part, my career has really been influenced by the trust and partnership of male work allies. When I started my career in investment banking, I was in a remote office in London, and my boss gave me an incredible amount of autonomy and exposure. So after 3 years, I felt confident enough to actually just leave the firm and set up my own with a reasonable skill set at a young age. And then years later, a former colleague in Silicon Valley tied me into a New York entrepreneurial team. We launched a content company, and he mentored me into a role, sort of transitioning from business development skills to sales skills. And that meant that for the transition after we got bought by Google to really have a pick from a bigger pool of opportunities in a well-defined sales environment. So it was really that allyship and sort of mentoring that helped me. And I guess lastly, just from experience in my current role, I'm one of 4 founders. I'm the only female and the only one who was over the age of 35 when we actually started. So I bring gender and experience diversity to the table. And the synergy and respect of all of us has really produced a solid executive team, but it's also allowed me to carve out my own domain of financial and legal and administrative operations, where I can really run things and grow as an executive. So that partnership with various male colleagues has really been valuable to me.
Before we wrap up on this one, what we all were talking about mentorship, and yes, it's not just mentorship. My sister is in higher education. She always talks about when you find a sponsor in a mentor that gives you that opportunity and that might stretch you because you don't think that you can handle it or you're not sure if you're ready for it, but having those people, and I'm so lucky. I don't think I'm ever leaving Disney because my boss, he's also my mentor and he's my sponsor. So I do think that what we're talking about allyship overall is just being, again, I keep saying it, intentional about it and making sure the next generation or whoever around you, you're giving them that opportunity to have that diverse and unique voice. So I like this one.
Yeah. And, now that we've talked about how allies can really help create impact on your career, right? It's something that you guys all have addressed on that part, which is amazing. I think what's important to also think about is, as leaders, we also need to be an ally back to others, right? We've received that allyship. How do we return that? And I think it's vital to ensure that every voice is not only present, but also valued. So with this in mind, how do you approach being mindful of who's at the table and who's missing? And how do you ensure that there's space for everyone to participate?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, not being afraid to speak up. If you see that there is someone underrepresented, it might be uncomfortable to call it out, like, hey, we need an Asian woman at the table. Where's the millennial? That's okay in today's society. I think that, it might feel like it's a rub, or it might rub people the wrong way. And that's okay too. I have an actual work example that I do want to share quickly. Chloe Bailey was doing the singer. She was doing a custom content program for us. And it was important for her to include diversity in what we were doing. And it was a cooking demonstration. And she said, you know what, I want diverse hands. It was just, hands that you saw on the video, right? So it wasn't about the person, it was just representation. She said, I want diverse cook for this custom content. And so she was, representing my client, and we noticed that they weren't casting diverse hands. And I went to leadership. I went to the production team. I said, hey guys, this is the client's request. We need to cast. Well, somehow internally that was misconstrued as I was being insensitive, and it was raised that it was reverse diversity or reverse discrimination. Thank you. And that because it happened to be that the person's hands were actually Asian, but you couldn't really, they were light hands. And so, I think that we solved it internally, right? Which is, if this was a client request, I was a Black woman, a Black leader who had to go and enforce something on behalf of my client that was perceived as if I were being discriminatory myself, right? So very complicated, raised all the way to HR on my side for me speaking up and standing for diversity at work for my client, right? So I think now maybe someone junior might not have felt comfortable going, and speaking up. But as we continue to raise, levels or elevate in our careers, these are uncomfortable conversations that we have to stand for. And whether it's a client dictate or not, don't shy away from making sure representation is, a priority and enforced at all levels.
Yeah, I guess to weigh in on this, I try to make an active effort as a woman to be present, to have an open door policy and ask opinions and just really show that I care. And I think working with mid-level people is important, inviting them to share ideas at any time, because one never knows, and that's potentially at all hours. At Adelaide, we created a Slack channel called Adelaides, where we can share matters of interest and concern for women. And for the most part, the tone is light, and we build a sense of community that sort of transcends roles. But we empower each other and create a safe space for sharing a variety of ideas. I guess I'd also add that it's always important to be aware of possible groupthink when there's immediate consensus on a subject. It's tempting to celebrate, but instead I get a little bit nervous that somebody's perspective or opinion might be missing. And on important matters like hiring and company policies and culture, you just have to try to seek and encourage broad input, and potentially specifically mandate that things need to happen. I think that's the way we can really change things.
I'll jump in here real quick. Talking about what does it take to have a significant presence in leadership and bringing that diversity, I would say it pays to be selective of the groups or the environments that you're fighting to be a part of, right? I think when we're talking about having a seat at the table, it's like, what table, and do I want a seat at that table? And that can be, it's difficult to implement. You're talking about your life, your career, and it can take a lot more to turn down opportunities. But I think having being selective on what it is that you're pursuing and the rooms that you want to be in could really help, because when your intuition tells you that perhaps the intention is not as ingrained in the systemic operation of a particular place or particular environment, and you go ahead anyways, it could lead to a lot of frustration. It could lead to you contorting who you really are, contorting your uniqueness and your talents in order to fit in, because you do not have the right support or you're not in the right environment to flourish. But when you're true to, following your instincts, and you're true to being selective, it might take a little longer, but from experience, that pays off a lot more for the individual, for your career, and it pays off, of course, for the organization, because then you get to flourish and thrive the way you should, versus being in an environment that tries to cap you or cap your shine or cap your uniqueness and your unique perspectives. And Kristen, what did you say? Sandpaper your style, right? So being selective, I think, of the leadership positions or positions of influence that you seek to thrive in.
Yeah, and I would say it truly is, as leaders of any organization, it is important for you to speak up and, be an ally, lead by example, let people know it's okay to have your voice be heard, and do it in a respectful way, right? I think I've learned a lot throughout my career too, to make yourself uncomfortable. And I think people this day and age, do feel a little uncomfortable calling out we need to, have people of color on this panel or have people from different nationalities. That's not uncomfortable. It's a reality. And I think it's okay to be really open and speak about those things. It's just necessary, and look around and be that voice to say, hey, maybe we should make some changes to, the panel lineup that we have, and not be silent and sit back and just kind of watch as, things unfold around you and maybe aren't representative and diverse. I was just on a call on Monday. I was talking about a panel at Cannes, for example, for an organization that is largely white male. And that's just, the way it is. Things are getting better and moving in that direction, but it does take people taking a stance and saying something. So one of my, C-level executives on FreeStar's team said, I think Heather should be on that panel. I'd like to, but I actually think it would be great. We're talking about a panel about perspectives. And so it'd be really good to have someone a little bit different and have diversity represented on this panel as well. So that kind of brings in the allyship as well. You've got someone else who understands and sees that there needs to be diversity brought into these kind of conversations at big events like Cannes and with big organizations across the industry. So it's really nice to have someone, not even think about themselves too. It seems like a little thing, but prop me up as well. So I think that's a great example of just little things that doesn't seem like a big thing, but it actually is a big thing. And you do that time and time again, and you see more and more people do that. And it's going to make a difference. And other people are going to follow suit and be like, wow, that was really great. And I feel like it could have a, domino effect the more we do that.
Yeah. And I love what you said, Heather, lead by example. It's very clear that all the stories that you guys share is leading by example, right? And so that is one way to really showcase and encourage others to kind of feel more comfortable by doing something similar to what you guys have done, which is the perfect segue. I think let's transition our discussion on inclusion to leadership. So one thing we want to emphasize is the importance of making women in leadership roles part of a revolving door, where opportunities are continuously available and accessible to all, rather than limited to just a select few. I think it's crucial to cultivate a culture where women are not only welcomed, but actively supported and empowered to lead. So our next question is, reflecting on your accomplishments, is there a specific mindset you attribute to your success? And what does it take to have a significant presence or influence in your leadership position?
I'll start. Definitely know your strength, know who you are, know why you're there. I think, 24 years isn't a lifetime, but it's a long time in advertising because a lot has changed. And I'm grateful to have seen that, right? I had been only in the room for so long, and now I do see so much more diversity. So I think as an industry, we're doing better. But along the way, it's easy to get discouraged when you're not being, like you said, Heather, propped up, or someone saying, you do this panel, not me. So I think knowing your worth and your value, and never being apologetic about it. It's knowing that seat is for you at the table, and having that confidence. My leadership team, I have 4 VPs that manage a team of sellers, and 3 of them are women. And coming from the other side of the acquisition, it wasn't that way. It was mostly men. And I think instilling confidence in the women leaders that we have, trusting them, but doing it through your own confidence, and showing and being an example is key. And sometimes it's hard as a diverse woman, because it could be received as being cocky or overly confident, or aggressive, right? I hate that word. But it's, if I were a male, would I be perceived as aggressive? So I don't lose my edge, because that's the perception. It's being able to communicate your intention, make sure people know why you're there, what you're, that you're there for the team, and what your common goal aligns with the objectives of the organization. So there's a balance, right? And being at that seat, being confident, knowing your value, but having those soft skills to make sure people understand, that there's a rhyme and a reason for your for your style and how you approach that conversation. So I will pass it on.
Yeah, I would say I love the mentality of never giving up, that persistence and really working hard and setting goals. I know when I moved to New York around 2010, and I'd look around at other people, and hard not to compare yourself to other people, but I'm like, I want to be a director. I want to be a VP. I want to be that C-level. And, I got the opportunity 6 months ago to get that seat at the table and to be that executive and be FreeStar's first female chief revenue officer. But, I worked hard for it. I didn't give up. I set those goals. I led by example. And a lot of it is creating relationships too, and being your authentic self. I talk to so many women all the time where I'm just really transparent. Like, man, did I deserve that job? I have imposter syndrome. I don't know, but other women feel that way too. And then you go, okay, that's a totally normal thing. Let's move on, figure it out. And, you prop each other up. You think about what your superpower is, and it's okay that you don't know all the things. That's why as you become a leader, you surround yourself, hopefully, with diverse people, other opinions that help fill the gaps, or, complement maybe the areas where you're not as strong. So, I think it is really important to you to have that network of people that you talk to. I had a happy hour with a bunch of women a couple months ago, and a lot of us were talking about that very thing, imposter syndrome. And the one thing I love about my CEO now, Kurt Donald, he writes these musings in a weekly newsletter to the company. And he wrote about how he went up and spoke in front of a bunch of CEOs. And he wrote this letter to our whole company of 200 people about how he felt imposter syndrome. And that's really cool too, to have other people, that men, women, whoever else, that can really make you feel, like it's okay to feel these feelings. And even if you're feeling uncomfortable about, should I speak up about, diversity or other things, a lot of other people are feeling that way too. So it's kind of normalizing, I think, and being authentic helps you to become a better leader too.
Yeah, I guess just to riff on that a little bit, and my mindset really includes a few things. And like Heather, working hard and getting stuff done, whatever the hour has always been my mantra. I find myself often to be the last one at work. That isn't something that is necessary for everyone's success, but it really helped me make sure that I had completed whatever people might be waiting for, and also so I was a little bit more prepared for the next day. But also important is just to be reliable. So people trust you. Most of my jobs have actually come from former colleagues. Often they've moved on, and then they remember, or they have that not just knowledge of your work, but hopefully trust of it. And so that's been very, very valuable. And I think also I've often tried just to lean into my strong suits. I think, as Heather said, I think, complimenting and sort of supporting your weakness is important, but I think sometimes you just have to lead with, a strong skill set, and ideally a skill set that's transferable, which, for me, it was financial, legal, sort of deal doing, and that could be moved from entity to entity. And I think lastly, that flexibility that is perhaps inherent in that. So change is inevitable, we all know now, especially in the tech industry, and embracing change rather than fighting it, I think often just prepares you really to take an opportunity. They just result if you're open to them and prepared. So I guess that's how I'd approach this.
I can speak a little bit on that as well. In terms of the mindset, what I use personally is, I had to train myself to rely on intrinsic motivations versus external motivations or validations. And in the workplace, for example, if like, oh, I'm going to stay late and work on this project, I'm doing it because intrinsically I think that it is needed and it aligns with my values to show up 100% for what I'm working on, versus, oh, I want my boss or my teammates to see me staying late. And that's really important to have this intrinsic motivation, because the tides will change. The tides do change. And if you only solely rely on this external validation, it can mess you up. It can mess up your flow. It can mess up your vibe. A random comment, a face change, a lack of exclamation mark in an email can throw you off, right? Versus when the motivation is internal, you're able to withstand the comings and goings of an environment, a workplace environment that sometimes can be tough, and just different, motivations and intentions and operations of people. So I think it's something personally that I've worked on, following that intrinsic motivation. And just like to add real quick, another thing on that is, yes, external validation is important, right? We exist in a capitalist environment and capitalist society, and we're working for pay and recognition and whatnot. When that comes, it's an icing on the cake. Don't rely on that as the foundation or the pillar of who you are and what you're doing. It's an icing on the cake, and when intrinsic motivations are aligned, eventually that follows suit as well.
And I'll just close this out on this topic here. I value everything you all have said and double click on it. But for me, the mindset, it's being optimistic. I lead with empathy and kindness. We just all spoke about how long we've been in this industry. It is, well, number one, hard work. And I think we all were talking about that. But two, this industry is very small. You never know who you're going to meet during negotiations, or hey, they might be a colleague once, but then they're going to be a client of yours next day. But what they do remember is that conversation, how you made them feel. And that's how I live and lead by example, to make sure that we are being as kind to the person across the table as we can, because I know that we all, Diane, you talk about it, change is constant. And this is the only thing you control is your mindset. So I just kind of wanted to round out on that, because I think that is how I lead. Thank you, Diane. But this is a great conversation. So thank you all.
I absolutely loved everything that you guys had to say. I mean, it's really about the power of your mindset and how it can really shape the way you approach a challenge or a situation. I think it's important to note that you might not always have control over what happens, but we have full control over how we tackle something. So our next question is actually centered around recent articles highlighting the various strengths that contribute to a woman's effectiveness as leaders. Some examples include sympathy, empathy, compassion, and the well-known strength of a woman's intuition. So keeping this in mind, could you share any instances where you relied on your own intuition to shape your leadership style?
So, speaking about a woman's intuition, I think at some point in my career, I'm sure everyone can remember when they realized or read the article that you can tell if an email is being sent by a man versus a woman, right? Women are naturally more empathetic and nicer, and we use more exclamation marks, and we use different adjectives and verbs, thank you so much for responding. No problem if you can't, but I really need this by 4 versus a man is just like send by 4 p.m. Right? And there's this toggle between I need to strip myself of my empathy and my uniqueness, the things that come naturally as a woman, so I can move further in this dog-eat-dog world, right? I need to send my emails to sound more like a man, delete some exclamation marks, remove the extra please, remove the pretty please. And it's a constant back and forth toggle. However, I've evolved to appreciate the intuition of a woman and the uniqueness of a woman in terms of, yes, I'm extra empathetic, and that's fine. I serve to make my team and my teammates feel more at ease, right? I use a little bit extra please and thank you. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to morph to sound and operate like a man. It's okay to embrace that uniqueness, like you said, of compassion and empathy as a strength. For example, I have team members that are on Pacific time. So, by it's noon here and it's starting their day, I try not to send them any Slack or emails before noon my time, right? Of course, maybe it's not urgent, they don't have to respond, but we all know when your Slack starts pinging at 7 a.m. and you're getting your kids ready for school, and maybe you just want to take a look real quick, or it just switches you mentally already into work mode. Those are small things, but they go a long way, and it's something, for example, I make sure that I don't do, and giving credit generously, celebrating even the smallest wins of your team, applauding and sharing praise generously, I think goes a long way. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And just, this kind of leads into our previous question, right? I trust my gut intuition both in and out of my day job and my personal life. And sometimes I probably need to talk to my gut, but I do feel like, women, we have our sixth sense. We know, and we lead by empathy, and it's okay, like you just mentioned. So I feel like with this fast-paced environment that we're trying to work in the ad tech space, it's, hey, let's look on the other side of the desk, understand their perspective, I think I love that. I'm like shouting it, as cliche as it is, like empathy all the way. That's my way I am as a leader. I'm never going to change that about myself. Some people might say, Lily's too nice or too kind and this and that, but like, that's how I've been able to get a leadership role at Disney. I want to continue to do that. So I think when we're talking about this relying on intuition, I also tell my team all the time, I trust and verify as a leader, right? Like I will give you that trust, but sometimes there are times that if you take advantage of it, or if there's something that's not working, I might have to shift that mindset a little bit, but I will give the benefit of the doubt. And I think being able, and as we're talking about growing up in the industry, we understand how much change has happened most recently, which is so exciting, but also know that, hey, we need to, Gen Z is a different generation than like, how do I mold that and bridge that gap? But I will always and continue to be that empathetic leader for this way.
I love that. I am very guilty also, Jiji, of too many exclamation marks, always sounding overly excited. I've backspaced, re-added, and then I just learned to accept that it's okay that I talk that way too. So I love that you called that out. But like exactly what Lily said, it's the idea that we're also human, right? It's not easy to separate your work self from your whoever you are outside of work. And I think that culture is changing. I think people are starting to come in and say, you know, I don't have two parts of me. I'm one person. I'm going to be present at work. I'm going to be present outside of work. But that becomes where those empathetic leaders really need to step up, because that's when you can really respect and understand how to properly support your team. So I love that that was addressed on that side. And, you know, it saddens me to say this, but we are approaching the final section of our discussion today. You know, I could go on and on about this conversation with all of you guys, just because there's been so much valuable insights from all of you. But I think there's one critical theme that we do need to address. And it was mentioned earlier a little bit, imposter syndrome. It's something that many people face in their career. And, you know, a stat that we recently found from KPMG is that 75% of executive women reported experiencing imposter syndrome during their careers. I think it's really highlighting the reality that imposter syndrome is something that women encounter at any stage at their professional journey. I think that's important to note. And with many women facing the obstacle throughout their careers, it's vital to explore how individuals, especially women, can overcome such hurdles and find the inspiration to propel themselves forward. So this question is, in moments of hesitation, doubt, or imposter syndrome, what approaches do you find most effective in overcoming these challenges and continue to progress in your career?
I'll take this one. I love that this conversation already arrived during earlier before we got to this mark. Imposter syndrome, I swear it came more to light in the most recent years, right? I'm an avid reader. I love reading about women leaders, and they talk more and articulated imposter syndrome. I think throughout my career, as I was growing up, it's, hey, Lily, like I'm a little shy, or I didn't want to speak up unless I know exactly what I'm saying. I want to make sure that I'm clear and bringing and adding value. And then I look in the room and people that are talking are just speaking because they have that confidence. And I feel like this is something that imposter syndrome that I have to on a daily basis. Even though I'm an executive at the Walt Disney Company, I still need to make it not sneak in, because I know that believing in myself, we talked about confidence and making sure that the voice and the mindset that I have is I'm here because I've earned it. The hard work, we all talked about, I guess, hard work for sure. I'm such a preparation person. I'll reread things. I'll make sure that when I show up to a client or any of my internal meetings, I'm prepared to have this conversation. So that helps me mitigate any of this imposter syndrome. But it is how it's always going to be there. And it's believing in myself, but also knowing that I'm only as good as my team is. So how can I make sure that the folks around me are feeling that confidence and that leading by example to suppress imposter syndrome? So I love this conversation that we have here.
Yes, Lily, I double click on all that. I think here's the key. You have to be confident that only you can bring your unique perspective. You aren't an imposter to yourself, right? You're only an imposter to what you think people want you to be. But if you're confident that you're bringing something unique to the table because it is you, that is very helpful. I find it helpful to talk to my parents or former colleagues or anybody who knows me and has a high opinion of my worth. And I'd recommend that to anyone, especially if you have decent relationships with your parents. They definitely will give you confidence. And I think otherwise, reminding yourself of your strengths on a regular basis helps you stay positive and believing in yourself, celebrating your wins, get the dopamine flowing, whatever does that for you. But I guess the most practical advice I have is to increase your confidence, I guess, is to get as much knowledge and, as I said, preparation as possible, whatever you need, so you're the expert in the room. And often in our jobs today, I mean, we're expected to be the expert in the room in our domain. So I think, again, boils down to preparation, and just know that you have a valuable opinion to contribute.
Speaking on imposter syndrome, I would say feel it, experience it, right? But act anyway. Never let that feeling of being an imposter stop you from taking action, right? So feel the shakes, feel the anxiety in your heart, but do it anyway. Speak up anyway. Send that email anyway. Ask for that meeting anyway. However, also, you know, there's a new perspective I have on imposter syndrome that has like changed my world. So basically, the conversation, which has been going on for at least the last 2 years based on my research, but it says that imposter syndrome is not just only or usually an issue of the individual, right? It's like, why do you feel like an imposter? But it's an issue of a system and an organization or an environment that promotes a certain kind of people or behavior or look or act or qualifications. And so when women feel imposter syndrome, you know, sometimes it's not just an issue of like your anxiety and you have to just deal with, just you and your therapist have to deal with. Sometimes there are actually valid external reasons that make us feel that way. I want to read a quote from a Harvard Business Review article that really resonated. It said, "The answer to overcoming imposter syndrome is not to fix individuals, but to create an environment that fosters a number of different leadership styles and where diversity of racial, ethnic, and gender identities is viewed as just as professional as the current model." So basically, when a model exists, anyone that looks different or acts different from that model eventually will feel like an imposter. So it's been revolutionary for me to know that imposter syndrome is not just something I have to fix for myself, but there are external reasons that lead women to feel that way.
Thank you. And I know we're actually at time, and I believe that some of our panelists do need to jump at this time. So I do want to you know, first off, if you need to jump, feel free to, but we can end the panel with one last question. And I think that will be a great way to end the conversation, which is, what is unexpected career advice you received that has proven to be valuable over time? You know, we'll keep it short and simple on this one.
Yeah, I will jump in here and actually have to jump off the call. So thanks again for the invitation. But the best advice that I've been given and that I'll give is keep going. Put numbers on the board, keep outperforming everyone, but don't stop. Just keep going and you will succeed. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
Something really interesting just came up about being prepared. I think Diane talked about it. Someone taught me about the 5 Ps. So proper planning prevents poor performance. So I think that's part of it. Those 5 Ps have stuck with me my whole life of, you know, being prepared, and that will help shake, I think, any nerves that you have and shake off, you know, potential imposter syndrome and those other things. Then also people will trust you because you're reliable, because you get stuff done and you're on top of it. So I think that was always really good advice. Another piece is, it's all going to be okay. I used to get really stressed when everything wouldn't go perfectly. And the way that I mentor people now, when they're really stressed about that email or this client, and I like that because it shows they care and there's passion, but it's like, it's going to be okay. Just keep going and don't be so hard on yourself. You know, that means if you're upset that you care, and that is a really good quality to have, but don't let it shake you and keep going. It's all going to be okay. And that's really stuck with me as well. Times when I was early in my career crying over something now at this point, I think is totally ridiculous now that I have children and all this other stuff and life experience. But that definitely helped me to say, okay, means I care, but you know, it is actually going to be okay, and have people can support that. It's been great.
I guess for me, 2 things have proven valuable, and maybe a different tack on keep going is really quit. If you aren't learning and growing and happy in a job, just leave it. It's not, ideally, if you don't need a safety net, then just don't use one. Keep going on to the next is really the thing. And also work with people smarter than you. At least who are as dedicated as you are, so you don't feel like you're the only one really pushing the ball up the hill. I think both of those things have been very valuable to me.
My unexpected advice was from Minda Kaling, the producer and actress. In an interview, she said she had parents raised her to operate with the confidence of a middle-aged white man. And that kind of stuck with me, after moving to the US and figuring out, oh, America is like this. But I would say, yes, operate with the confidence and often misplaced sense of self-importance of a middle-aged white man.
I like it. My two, and I'll be quick. My first one is always do your work so well. You never know who's talking about you when you're not in the room, so your work will speak for itself. Number two, one of my mentors, I've had numerous amazing mentors, but early on in my career too, it's always take the call, because you never know what you're worth unless you hear in the marketplace what you're valued at. So, and unexpected twists and turns. And I do love the Diane thought of just quit if you can't. And I know that there always are times that you have to be okay with it and face it. So I know we're at time, but those are my two thoughts.
I love it. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any Q&A at this point. I want to be mindful of everyone and respect everyone's time here. But I want to express a huge thank you to our panelists for bringing your authentic selves to this conversation and sharing your personal experiences with everyone. Your insights and perspectives have truly shed light on important topics and inspired us all. I know personally, I always get inspired whenever I talk to you guys and hear your own personal stories and advice. And I also want to thank our viewers for showing up and helping the industry take one step closer to building a more inclusive space. We really look forward to growing together as a community. And so until next time, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So
Bye,
much.